Hi, I'm Phil Funkenbusch, the Director of Theaters at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum in Springfield, Illinois. Ed McMurdo and I are working on a play right now that's opening March 17th, Flight by Charlayne Woodard. This is a play that takes place on a Georgia plantation in 1858. A young 5-year-old boy has just witnessed his mother being sold off and taken away in front of his eyes. He then runs out into the woods and climbs a tree. This 90-minute play takes place in the woods when members of the slave community are trying to talk him out of the tree. So what Charlayne Woodard has done, taking these slave narratives, she has melded them together with African and African-American folk tales. It's a fascinating piece of theater. So we're going to play some excerpts right now from a recent phone conversation I had with playwright Charlayne Woodard.
The seed was planted for this play by Corey Madden, who was at the Mark Taper Forum at the time, Center Theater Group here in Los Angeles, under the artistic direction of Gordon Davidson, and whom I call my fairy godfather. Because Corey, you write a play, and then the theater community makes you write more.
Exactly.
And or they facilitate your writing more. And she came to me and said she grew up with rabbit tales.
Yes.
And she wanted me to, and she was the head of PLAY, Performances for LA Youth. And she wanted me for PLAY to write a play that was an adaptation of rabbit tales. So first of all, I didn't know if I could write just for children. But I thought, well, I'm going to write what I can write. I researched all those rabbit tales, which led me to folk tales, African and African American, and that led me to slave narratives, the research. Yeah. So when I had all of this, and of course at the same time, I'm talking and talking and talking because this is really how I write. And I'm speaking to my young people, my teenagers. When I say young people, I mean teenagers. And they know nothing about slavery. They don't want to know anything about slavery. It was ridiculous. And that's when I said, and forget the rabbit tales. They were like, what? So I went to Corey and I said, Corey, I want to adapt these folk tales and these slave narratives, and I don't really want to include any rabbit tales. And she said, let's see what you have. That was that. I said, I feel drawn to this material and to these people that I have met in the slave narratives. And so I started off adapting the narratives, and I saw that I loved them, the ones from Africa and America.
Yes.
So I thought, well, we'll have an evening of, and the first workshops were just to see if the narratives would hold. I chose the ones I loved, just the ones I loved. That's the way I write. Is this exciting me? Is this an interesting story? And there was nothing there but narratives at first. And I adapted those, had a workshop. They worked. And then I decided I needed to wrap the narratives, the folk tales in a cocoon of people, add the people
and that's
that I had
exactly
met
what's
in those
so
narratives.
brilliant about the play. How you bridged those two completely different styles into one piece of theater, and that's what's been very exciting for us to work on.
Oh, well, thank you, because I think most people find that pretty challenging.
It is very challenging.
But that's the way I wanted to tell the story. I don't think I've ever told a simple story. Slavery in America was the most gruesome form of slavery ever in history. There was slavery forever, but the American slavery and this Caribbean slavery and this South American slavery was the first time when they treated human beings as if they were animals. It was the most gruesome institution ever. And we were overcomers. And we haven't begun to tell the stories of these people. So that's why I took these narratives. These are real people. This woman actually did receive a wedding ring carved out of a button, a found button.
Wow.
And her guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
These are true things that happened. And I want them to know that these people as these slaves, not as slaves, but as human beings who were overcoming human beings, overcoming amazing things day by day, moment by moment.
And you have done that beautifully. Believe me, anyone who has walked into a rehearsal the last week has just been spellbound.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting because, again, it's so unique and it's so beautiful, and it's just got so much in it.
And one of the ways African Americans have always taught their children, slaves, everybody, in the generations of African Americans have been teaching people, not by sending them to the library, not by, saying, go pick up this book, but basically through storytelling.
Yeah.
That was the tool they had. They didn't have libraries. They weren't allowed to read. How would we teach you something? So they gave them these folk tales, these stories that would teach them a lesson. And you know what I really loved, Phil? Charting a story from Africa and how it changed as it came to the Caribbean and ended up here. Yeah. Once it got here, an African story told a blissful, wonderful African story that talks about community and trusting in your neighbor and giving people a chance, turned into a nightmare story once it got to America because the rules were all different.
Yeah.
Wow. And to the point where I didn't even put that in there.
Yeah.
I didn't put that story in.
Yeah, I figure you must have just pages and pages of material that you didn't use.
Exactly. But once I knew that I was going to use these particular people that I created, then I could actually see what can bring that little boy down.
Yeah.
What can bring him down from that tree? What can help him change his mind throughout this night?
Yeah.
Not just any old story.
Right.
And if it's too scary, well, he's traumatized already.
Yes,
he's
exactly.
lost his mom.
So that was Charlayne Woodard, playwright of Flight, opening March 17th at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum. It's really a fascinating play. It's a 90-minute theater piece. It's good for the whole family. I hope you'll come. Once again, we are blessed with having an amazing cast of actors: Tashiana Gorans, Christopher Roberts, Tracy Shaw, Joel Tinsley Hall, Tiffany Williams, and local musician Roosevelt Pratt. There's a music score throughout the entire show by composer Carl Lundenberg. So please, come see Flight at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum March 17th through the 27th.